Hello team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to today's video. So today's video is going to be all about how you can write your own training program, okay? And I thought this would be really valuable because January's fast approaching, most people will want a new program. So today's video is going to be split into 4 main areas that you need to think about when you're writing your program. So the first area is, why are you doing the program? What are your goals? What are the outcomes you want to get from the training program that you are trying to create? Without that, you can't do anything else after it. You can't think about what exercise you're going to do. You can't think about how you're going to train. All of the good stuff doesn't matter if you don't have a goal. Area number 2 is programming considerations. So for nerds like me, this is the fun stuff, okay? This is volume, this is frequency, this is intensity. How are you going to regulate that? What are you going to do? What's your approach? Low volume, high volume. The possibilities are endless. That tends to be where it gets a little bit confusing, but I'll try and make it as easy to understand as possible. Number 3 is exercise selection. Again, fun stuff. What do you have at your disposal? Disposal. Which gym do you go to? Do you go to a pure gym? Do you go to Ultraflex? If you do, I'm jealous. There is no gym snobbery here. However, it all impacts how you program. And lastly is the feedback and your recovery that you feel from the program, okay? We are executing the program. We need to be able to perfect it, refine it, and the easiest way to do that, and something that I recommend, which we'll talk about in more detail in stage 4 later on in the video, is how you can use that feedback to make the program better for you, because obviously you're living it, you're doing it, you know how to make it better, and if you don't like something, you won't do it. So enjoy the video, and without further ado, let's go on with it. And like I said, let's start with area number 1, okay? And this is obviously super important. You're gonna hear loads of people talk about goals, goal setting, your purpose, but it really does provide the focal point to any training program that you are trying to write. When I'm writing a training program for my clients, I will always ask them why they're doing this. What do they want to achieve? Well, how do they want to develop their physique? And if it's they want to grow their back, they want to grow their legs, stuff like that. I then use that to dictate what I put in the training program, okay? So I think you should go through a goal setting process, okay? Because there's no point just doing a generic program, because you could go and download that right away and start from My Protein. It wouldn't necessarily bring you that much benefit, but it would tick all the boxes for a program. So write down what you want to achieve. In physique development, this is called a needs analysis. And what does your physique need? And then these needs drive what you do in your programming and all of the other considerations you have in your training program. So think about what you want to achieve with your physique. Where do you see it in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months? And then reverse engineer it and use that as a spearhead to all of the things that now come in stages 2, 3, and 4.
Chill and relax.
New location, I know, new location, different topic. So we're going to talk about now, we're going to talk about area number 2 or topic number 2, discussion point number 2. And this, as a coach, is the fun stuff, okay? This is the part where we're talking about volume, we're talking about intensity, we're talking about frequency, we're really thinking about the ins and outs of the training program and how to make it work for you. So I think one of the main things you need to think about with your training program is what volume are you going to use within your training program? Of course, where you place that volume is going to link back to the goals and the aims of your training program. So how much volume can you handle as an individual? And without knowing you, this is something that's completely person dependent. You will need to experiment and find out to find your maximum recoverable volume, your minimum recoverable volume, and everything in between so that you know these different volume landmarks to influence your training program. I think a good rule of thumb is, if you are an advanced lifter, is to err on the side of a lower volume approach, because arguably as you get more advanced, your ability to push intensity and your accuracy within your training goes up, so therefore your volume needs to come down. However, if you're a new trainee, don't take offense to this, you will probably have less accuracy in your training. You will have less of an ability to build that intensity within your training. So therefore your volume will need to be higher so that you can stimulate your muscles to grow. And like I said, always err on the lower end of the volume landmark. And why? Because what you need to monitor is that if you are performing better, if all of your other feedback from your training program, such as your scale weight, such as your performance, are going in the correct direction, you know that the volume you are using at the moment is enough volume for you to be able to progress. Because realistically, if we are applying progressive overload, our performance should be getting exponentially better each week or across a prolonged period of time. Likewise, you need to be thinking about frequency of your training, and this will link heavily to your lifestyle, your job, what you do, how much spare time you have, and realistically how much you can get into the gym. And in terms of frequency for muscle groups, again, it is dependent on your ability to recover, but a good rule of thumb is that you want to be training a muscle somewhere between 48 hours to 72 hours. That seems to be the magic number. For smaller muscle groups, you might be able to get away with training them more frequently. However, larger muscle groups like legs and muscle groups that take a lot of energy to execute and train properly may require longer because of the systemic fatigue that you accumulate from those training sessions. But again, your frequency will be completely reliant on the goals of your program. As we know, like I said when I spoke about volume, volume is one of the key drivers for hypertrophy. So you need to be thinking about where are you placing that volume? And if you want to grow a certain muscle group, it would be favorable to have higher volumes potentially in that muscle group. And frequency is an invaluable way of increasing that weekly volume because you have the ability to increase volume without increasing the lengths of training sessions and the work done in a short period of time. You can spread it across a week. And now, and not least in this section, is intensity, okay? And intensity is a super hot topic at the moment. Everyone's talking about it. Do you need to train to failure? Do you need to train reps in reserve? The literature kind of suggests that if we are going to within a decent proximity of failure, within 3 reps in some cases, you are creating enough of a stimulus to facilitate hypertrophy or muscle gain. So, in terms of your intensity, again, this sounds like a broken record. It is completely dependent on how you like to train and where you are in your training kind of development. Lots of advanced lifters have the ability, like I said, to train intensely. Therefore, their volume potentially may need to be lower. If you're a new lifter, you might not be able to develop that ability to train intensely because of your training age, because you don't know the movement patterns, lots of different things, so therefore your volume might need to be higher. There is a relationship between intensity and volume that you will need to think about in your training program. If you're taking every set to absolute balls to the wall failure, you probably need to go on a lower volume approach. If you are training far away from failure, you could potentially look at doing a higher volume approach. And remember, none of these points are in isolation. They are all completely linked, so get your thinking caps on. And then once you think about and know all of this information, you can use it to actually think about your training split, okay? And the split is very often something that is overcomplicated, people care way too much about. Some very common training splits are push-pull legs, upper body, lower body splits, or full body splits across the week. And again, that links completely to how many times a week you can train, your volume capabilities, and the goals of your training program. As you need to apply specificity and all of the basics of programming to your training split. One thing you need to think about within your training split, and is kind of talking a little bit about area number 4, is your rest days and your recovery, okay? And one of the biggest take homes I think you need to think about is that I think you need to have more rest days than you probably realize, okay? The first mistake I made when I first started lifting was that I didn't take enough rest days. I just trained all the time, and realistically this impacted on my performance, this impacted my progress, and probably held me back. So, a good rule of thumb, I think, for most natural guys and assisted guys, if you're watching this, is to train twice in a row and then have a day off. This seems to be, for a lot of our clients, a really good mix between stimulus and recovery, and really gives you a good runway to be able to progress for a long period of time. You could, if you're super on top of your recovery, your nutrition and everything else, do 3 days in a row. However, I would argue, how much benefit is that last session actually giving you? And would you be better off actually just having a rest day there and then coming back in and hitting that session fresh? Again, you can really get as complicated as you want with your training split. For example, my current training split is push, pull, rest, lower, upper, rest, repeat over 2 rotations. The reason for that is I want to have more upper body volume, because I've identified that from my recent bodybuilding show, that my lats, my chest and my arms are my weakest body parts. So therefore, that extra upper body day is specific to meet those needs of my physique. There's tons of information there. I can't go into it all in a video, so take the information, go and research it yourself. It's a tough topic. So this, again, as a coach, is the fun part, and this is the part that people think about most when they think about a new training program or about writing a training program, and that is exercise selection. Why is it fun? Because it's the stuff we get to do, it's the movements we're going to perform, it's the things we're going to do on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis that are going to bring us that muscle gain, hopefully. And of course, again, it's hard to separate exercise selection from the other points that we have made already in this video. What are you trying to do from this training program? Because if you're trying to grow your legs, it would make sense to have exercises that really do work and stimulate your your leg muscles to create that environment for muscle growth. But that aside, and enough of me talking about how they linked, because I think you get that by now, the thing that really dictates exercise selection is where you train, okay? If you have the luxury of training at Ultraflex, I'm very jealous. If you train in a pure gym, I feel for you. But jokes aside, where you train and your gym environment will obviously impact what you can perform in your training program. So you really need to have a think about your environment and if it is actually helping you write a good training program. Yes, you can make great progress in a pure gym, but if you have more potential movements to do in a more bodybuilding style gym or in a different type of gym environment, it may be beneficial in that sense. And once you know what kit you have at your disposal, then you just need to piece it into your training split that you would have thought about in area number 2. The good thing about going to a gym where there is a lot of kit or lots of different possibilities is that you might be able to run a rotation that is over a longer split. You could run a 2 rotation split or even a 3 rotation split if you have enough different variations of movement patterns that you can then subsequently train and progress for a long period of time. However, this doesn't mean that you can't make great progress in basic gyms. It just means you need to be very on point with your programming and your exercise selection and execution moving forward. Another thing you need to think about with exercise selection is your unique biomechanics, okay? Like, none of us, unless you're an identical twin, are the same. So therefore, programming something because your favourite bodybuilder does it is probably not wise, and likewise, programming something that your mate does is also probably not going to suit you that well. So have a think about your own unique biomechanics and think about what movements from your training history work well and have brought about good results from you. If they have brought you good results, it would probably make sense to keep them in again or keep in a variation of them again. Exercise selection can be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. There is no real limit on what you can learn and how optimized you can make your exercise selection. And likewise, if you just did a squat and you squatted very well, you probably would grow your legs. So find out where you sit on the spectrum, take information from both camps, and design the perfect training program for you based around exercises that you love and can do very well.
Chill and relax.
Brings us nicely to the last point, and this is one of the key points and is often missed when you program for yourself, because normally a coach would be doing this monitoring for you. So area number 4 and tip number 4 is that you need to be gathering feedback and information on how well the training program is going, okay? And if there's anything I've learned in my time in education, if you didn't know, I'm a qualified teacher, is that feedback and the impact of feedback is greater when the feedback is very close to the thing that's happened or the thing that we want to change. So all through your training program, you need to view your training program as not finished book. And if something's not working, because you've written it yourself, you can literally change it in the blink of an eye. And it's this feedback that will help you develop your understanding of yourself and your training moving forward, that will make writing your own training program super easy in the future. So think about your feedback, and this isn't just feedback on the training program itself, this is biofeedback, this is lifestyle feedback, and this is where, again, it can get as complicated as you want. What are you tracking that will help you understand whether your training program is working? You should be tracking your performance, you should be tracking your form, your progressions, you should be tracking biofeedback like your scale weight, your sleep, your stress, your cortisol, your recovery, because if you can optimize all of those things outside of your training program and utilize the feedback that we know is as a result of your training program, we can use that to reverse engineer things and make the process better for yourself, okay? So don't neglect the feedback that you can gather from your own experience. And likewise, and integral to this part of feedback is your recovery, okay? Because sometimes we get things wrong, and if you get things wrong, you will know straight away. Your recovery will be shot really early on in a training block, and this is where the feedback that you gather from your biofeedback, are you tired before you should be? Are you struggling to perform well? And it will all indicate whether you're too fatigued or not fatigued enough. And again, this is something that will develop with your training age, but realistically what you'd want to see is that your biofeedback starts your training program in a really good place, and then as you progress over a training block, your fatigue should go up. So you should probably start to report feelings of feeling tired. You might see that motivation goes a little bit. Of course, it doesn't have to be like that, and you can be completely on top of your recovery, but what you can do by monitoring that and gathering that feedback is you then know when to deload and implement a training break from the training program you're on. So that's tip number 4. Don't neglect the feedback, and obviously do not neglect your recovery as well. So those are the main points I think you need to think about when you're writing your new or training program for January, or for whenever you're watching this video. Of course, there is tons of other content on my channel. So up here are going to be some links to my most recent videos, and probably somewhere down here is going to be some links to podcasts that I upload onto the channel. And in those videos, we go into deep detail about volume, training, recovery, all things growing muscle, okay? So give those a watch, and if you've got this far into the video, if you go to the top link in the description below, there is actually a free training program that you can download and start using today. And of course, don't forget to like the video if you found it helpful, subscribe if you're new around here, and make sure you turn notifications on so you can see all of my videos when they're uploaded. But other than that, I hope you have a great day whatever you're doing, and I'll see you in the next video.